Okay, so this is the wine right here,
That's
right?
the wine.
I Best is the name of the wine, right?
Yeah, it's my namesake, I Best Wines. And it's my way of definitely putting some legacy on the shelf.
So, okay, what's the process? What's your journey in the spirits industry to even get to this point? And at what point do you decide that you want to take a leap of faith and create your own product?
So 20 plus years, I've been in the wine and spirits business. I've worked for three of the largest suppliers in the world. I've worked on two joint ventures. And I think it was the exposure to just seeing what those businessmen did in the wine and spirits industry that really inspired me. I was like, well, wait a minute. I'm helping everybody make all this money.
What was your role?
So I started out as an ambassador. That's how I started. And I launched a small rum brand for Diageo. And through that role, I just got hyper exposed to every function, which typically in ambassador roles, you don't always get exposed at that level. I did. And so I quickly realized I was like, I love this because before that, I was a street promoter. I did street promotions on the music side. And I realized I was like, oh, this is like working records, working these, brands is like working records. So it was, I think I just had a natural talent for it. And so I started as ambassador, then I moved into a hybrid role, sales and marketing, which was good for me. Initially, I really fought being in a sales role because I was like, it's not sexy. I don't want to do this. I'm a marketer. I do promotions. But learning the commercial side of the business made me so well-rounded. Like I was unstoppable because I understood how to sell. And then got a role just on marketing proper on Hennessy during the revitalization period of Hennessy, because there was a period where nobody was
What
really.
year? What time frame we talking about with the revitalization? Because some of the listeners are like, "This always been hot."
Yeah, yeah. I would say from probably 2000 and like 15 until about a couple of years ago
What, that
when
Hennessy fell off?
no, that we actually did a
Oh,
revitalization on
revitalization. Was
Hennessy,
that like
got the brand
When Nas got involved?
when Nas got
Were
involved.
you part of that?
Yeah, we were all part of that. And there was an incredible group of people that were working on Hennessy at the time. You know how you have those teams that get assembled and you're like, that's the team.
Mhm.
It was an incredible team and it was a special moment and definitely a defining moment for me to see such a, like, I think legacy brand and iconic brand be reimagined, right? Because at one point people really saw Hennessy as like your dad's drink. And then it was like, how do we make this young and hot and fresh? And we did that. And it had a great run. And then here comes tequila, which is what's happening now, right? So I did that. I worked on the Hennessy team. And then I worked on the Belvedere team because the gentleman who was running Hennessy got the job to try to revitalize Belvedere. And I did that for a bit. And then I got a call from the Roc Nation team saying, we need someone to fill this role on Douce to manage the joint venture for Bacardi and Roc Nation. And what they really were looking for was somebody who had the business side, right? Who did understand the commercial, the marketing, the promotion, but culture. And there's not a lot of people, unfortunately, in corporate that check all those boxes. So then I went to run the joint venture on the Bacardi side. And I did that for 2 years, and it was incredible, as you guys can imagine.
Yeah.
And at the time, again, cognac was very much so having its moment. Douce is a great brand, and we built an incredible team and definitely got the attention of bigger brands like a Hennessy. We were considered one of those ankle biters, like, what are they doing? How are they doing this?
Mhm.
And that's the power of obviously Roc Nation and Jay and everything that they've built. And then I got a call from Puff's team saying, we need somebody that understands joint ventures, that knows how to run this business. We're at a critical point. The joint venture has been around for a while, and we just need to breathe some life into it.
Yes. So each one of these brands are looking at you for your expertise because not just because you're a marketing genius, but because you're telling stories. I
Correct.
feel like that's the part. Even when we spoke about the Hennessy thing, I remember. I mean, for me, it was like watching Mobb Deep and Prodigy has a jersey on. I'm like, what's that?
Right.
To now where I'm hearing Nas narrate stories,
Right.
and now it feels different. And so where did you get the sense of storytelling, right? Is it from that love of music, or was it just a natural instinct that you had?
Yeah, I definitely would say, music is my first love. In
Mhm.
my mind, I was going to be a big music executive. Like
Okay.
nobody couldn't tell me that I wasn't going to like run a label, launch a label. Music is really my first love. And during the street promotion days, that's what you were doing. You were telling these stories for these artists in your markets. And so I took that and I applied it to how I would tell stories around brands. And all these brands have long legacy. I mean, crazy legacy. Some of these brands are 300 years old. The problem is those stories aren't stories about us because these brands aren't owned by us. And so when you get a marketer that can then make it relatable to a whole new generation, to cultures, that's what I realized that I was really good at doing that. And I was really good at building teams to do that, putting together the right pieces of the puzzle to do it. So for instance, on Douce, I hired a Black Parisian guy, moved him from Paris to New York to work on Douce because Douce is a French brand. Who better else to tell the story than a French Black guy, right? And to do education and do all that kind of stuff. So I think my sweet spot was like understanding how to storytell, but doing it through building great teams. Yeah.
So all right. So you're establishing yourself. When do you leave the corporate world and become an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So I called Puff and I said, it's time for me to launch my wine. And when I took the job with him, I told him this is gonna be my last job. I know that if I'm forever working, if I don't give myself a like exit plan, I'm gonna do this forever. Cause listen, the checks are nice. It's nice to be an executive. It's nice to have all the budgets and all the bells and whistles. And you can get very comfortable. And so I knew I didn't want to find myself just getting too comfortable. And so I told him, I said, listen, it's time. I got to take this leap of faith. And he fully supported me and was like, you know what? I already know that you're going to do your thing. Like, and I'm here to support you any way I can. And I'm forever grateful to him for that. And so 2 years ago, I resigned and I went on a missionary to launch this brand, and it really was this life-changing trip to South Africa where I was like, why they didn't tell us that this was here? But of course they didn't tell us, right? We had to go find it
With
for
the
ourselves.
vineyards?
Yeah.
They have vineyards in South Africa?
Oh
Yeah.
man, it's one of the most beautiful wine regions in the world and some of the most incredible wine in the world. And for people in wine, they know South African wine. For real wine collectors, real wine connoisseurs, people who, travel, they absolutely know about the wine region. But here I was 20 years in the game. I didn't know anything about South African wine. And I like to consider myself, someone who was really in the know. I had traveled the world for wine.
So how did you find you just randomly was in
Yeah.
South Africa, or you went there specifically looking for it?
Yeah, so my girl Angela got hired for a gig in South Africa. And she called me. She said, I'm going to South Africa. You want to come? I was like, what? She's like, it's the week of your birthday. I was like, say no more. I booked my ticket and I went to South Africa. And I was actually there a few days before her. And then she arrived. And I just remember like being in restaurants and you would open up because of course I always go, I'm conditioned to look at the wine list, to
Okay.
look at, right? And I'm like, South Africa, South Africa. I'm like, look at this wine list. Like, look at these wines. And it was really that trip that just like made me want to go and like really understand what was going on. And so then we decided, so that was the first trip. It was really a casual trip. It was just girlfriends hanging out. But I remember those wine lists like stuck with me. I was like, this wine is really good. And then we activated around Global Citizens when it was in South Africa. So I basically added a few days in advance of the trip and I went to the wine region. And that's when I was like, oh, okay, that's what's going on here.
They've been hiding it.
They've been hiding this from us. And initially, I was going to launch a wine from Napa because I'm from the Bay. I mean, I could have done that with my eyes closed. But, telling this story about South Africa, and the truth is, I really fell in love with South Africa. Like, I love it. It feels like home to me. I planted my roots there. And I knew that I didn't wanna do anything that wasn't disruptive. Like, I knew if I just did Napa, like, that was expected. So launching from South Africa was certainly the disruptive route, which makes sense for me.
I mean, it's a life-changing trip. Outside of just falling in love with the country and finding the wine, I know art plays a part in that. We'll get to
Mhm.
that a little bit later, but what's step one now, right? Like, you found out that this is, I think, the third largest wine region in the
Yeah.
country, in the world,
In the
in
world.
the world. You have the vision for it. I want to create I have to be disruptive. Napa's not going to do it because everybody does that.
Right.
What's step one now? When you get back and create the plan, what does it look like?
So step one was really, I prayed about it.
Mm,
That was step one. Step one, I prayed. I was like, okay, God, tell me if this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And the answer was yes. And then I would say the next step was connecting with people in South Africa. And the biggest thing for me was I wanted to make sure that no one in the wine industry in South Africa would feel any offense to me as a Black woman, like touting the South African wine renaissance, right? Because I'm still a Black woman from America. And so I think it was super important for me to like connect with winemakers, just really understand the background of the wine region. Listen, the Black farmers, Black winemakers, I mean, apartheid, like, I just really did a lot of research. So I wasn't going into this as like a naive American, which I think a lot of times we do. I wanted to be respectful, I wanted to be tasteful, and I wanted to do this with South African people. So that was, I would say, after praying, it was like, okay, find the people that are going to tell you yay or nay. And everyone that I spoke to was so excited. They were like, man, we've been waiting for America to really understand what's going on with South African wine. This sounds amazing. I got so much love and so much blessing. I really felt like I needed to ask a bit of permission
mm,
just from a respectful standpoint. Not
yeah.
that I can't do what I want to do as a business, but just out of pure integrity and respect. Everyone was so supportive. And from that, I was like, oh, it's on.